VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. We got Vikings galore today. The final day of May, June 1st, is kind of a big day in Vikings, not lore, but on the calendar, because Dalvin Cook could be traded or released for a lesser financial penalty. So that's the first thing I'm going to ask you. We have a different topic on the agenda, as you'll see from the headline. We're going to go over underrated roster moves from your brain, but foremost, because we won't talk until 2 weeks from today, because I'll be at Disney World next week. Tell me, does Dalvin Cook get traded, released, or is he on the team indefinitely?
I'm still leaning towards they're probably gonna end up having to release him, honestly. I'm still kind of on that. I think it's a lot more likely now that the report came out last week that he just sticks with the Vikings and he'd be
Mm-hmm.
more willing to take a pay cut or something. What's up, Stone?
He asked if he could make a cameo. I thought it'd be more pronounced than that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the Vikings are gonna end up having to get rid of him. Just there's just so many mouths to feed in that backfield between Madison, McBride. We talked about this all offseason with
Mm-hmm.
why we think that ultimately Cook would be on the Vikings roster at the start of the season this year. And it feels like the trade options are starting to dry up a little bit with Ezekiel Elliott's on the free agent market. Miami, I mean, they'll have the cap space to make a move for him, but do they want to use their cap space on another running back when they've got 4 or 5 already on their roster? Like, it doesn't feel like it'd be a cool fit just because it'd be the homecoming story and everything. But I don't know if logistically it makes a ton of sense for them to make a move right now. So I don't think that he's going to be on the roster. I think they're going to end up releasing him, but it's definitely feels a lot more likely that he'd just stick around than it did even a couple days ago. So there's that. So who really knows?
Yep, and tomorrow is the pivotal date because if they trade him, they save 11 million in cap. If they release him, it's 9 million, and those were reduced if the move happened today or any other day
Mm-hmm.
this offseason. So, Vikings fans, that is your cue to be on Dalvin Cook watch. And if nothing happens in the next week or so, that might mean that he'll be on the team until a RB needy team springs up from injury or otherwise. But this is the day that we've kind of circled on the calendar. The other little bit of news that kind of hit before we pressed record on this episode, as K fans, Mark Rosen said to look out for Justin Jefferson in the next 48 hours. And Mr. Rosen is not a hot take merchant. That probably means he has some intel. And we're all guessing that means the inevitable contract extension that everybody from Kwesi Adoffa-Mensah to Kevin O'Connell to Jefferson personally have implied will get done. So I don't need you to predict the outcome. I want to ask, what is the contract? How many years? How many million?
I think we're probably looking at using that Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams contracts as pretty much the baseline for this. I think it's going to be a market resetting deal where it's at least like 60 million guaranteed over the first
Okay.
3 years. We're looking at probably over 100, 120 million in total over those 4 years, like probably an annual value somewhere between 30, $35 million. So I do think that it's going to be a pretty big one when it goes down. It's going to be quarterback money for sure.
Okay. My formal prediction is 4 years and 132 million. And I
Mm-hmm.
still get confused, even though I'm immersed in this stuff every day or every second. I'm still confused on if the 5th year option will be baked into that, because hopefully that
I
means
think it would
he'd
be.
be more affordable. But yeah, but when I started to talk, like, listen, Josh, when I started to talk about like stating that as like, of course they would do that, I had some fairly smart people be like, no, 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 they could just tear up that 5th year option as
Huh.
a token of respect to Jefferson. I'm like, well, that's a huge token. It'd be really weird just not to use the advantages that are already there because the player is coveting guaranteed money. But we shall see. That's an afterthought in the grand scheme of things. But here's what I want from you now. Last week, I did an episode about my underrated moves of the offseason, and folks evidently were interested in it. So now I want yours. And it appears you have a list of 5, so you can start in whatever order you'd like. Hit me with it.
I'm going to start out. It's one of the moves have went a little bit under the radar. It feels like I feel like the Harrison Smith pay cut. It just
Mm-hmm.
kind of seemed like okay, yeah, that's going to get done, and then it obviously did. But it still feels like a really big move for the Vikings this year. It took him down from it lessens his base salary by 6.7 million for this year. Gives him a ton of flexibility throughout the offseason, which they used to sign their draft picks, sign all these free agents. And without that move, they probably wouldn't be able to get it done. And is coming off of a year where he recorded 5 interceptions. He was one of the
Mm-hmm.
better safeties in the NFL. Like it was a pretty dang good bounce back year from his 2021 season where it's kind of just iffy on and off again, where it's just he's still one of the smarter safeties in the league, obviously, but it seemed like he lost a step or two. But it was a really good bounce back year last season, and he still manages to stay with the Vikings on a pay cut. I think that's a really big signing for the Vikings, and just again offered them a ton of flexibility throughout the entire spring.
Depending on how many more years he stays, whether it's this one and then an extra, just this one or this one and two more, he really is going to go down in Vikings like lore as one of the top. I mean, he's been here from 2012, and if he keeps going, we're starting to talk about a guy who's played for 12, 13 years by the time he retires, and that's mammoth, especially in recent history. Vikings football. The other thing I want to do real quick on that topic is tie it back to Dalvin Cook. In the event Dalvin Cook stays in Minnesota, it might have a Harrison Smith type effect. I think what happened to Harrison Smith is when he started to look at free agency, he realized that taking a pay cut with the Vikings might be more money in total than what he would get on the open market. And if that is the case for a safety, it could damn sure be true for a running back. For instance, Dalvin Cook's cap hit right now is 14.1 million. If he thinks he's going to go on free agency and get 5-6 million bucks from the Broncos or the Dolphins or somebody, well, if the Vikings were saying, "Hey, we're cutting your salary to 7 million, take it or leave it," he might take it because it's a better deal than hitting free agency and getting the Ezekiel Elliott effect, which is just giant crickets right now about who wants to sign him. All right, what's your next so we got Harrison Smith's pay cut. What's the next one?
Next one, I'm going to move over to the coaching staff here.
Mm-hmm.
We had a ton of rumors flying around about Keenan McCardell potentially getting an OC job, particularly the New England Patriots. And the fact that whether it's his choice, Minnesota talked him into staying, or just New England decided to go in a separate direction, I think it's huge that he stuck around, because this is a guy last offseason that Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen were banging the table for him to stay on Kevin O'Connell's staff after he was hired in 2021 to be with Mike Zimmer. So keeping him on the staff, being able to be a mentor to young receivers like a Jordan Addison, who's just getting along, and continuing to progress Justin Jefferson to be even more of a dynamic receiver over the next few years. I think that this is a really big move for the Vikings, and it should provide some more stability on their offensive side of the ball.
That is extremely noteworthy. And what I think, or maybe it's what I hope, maybe I'm marrying both, is I'm going to guess that Wes Phillips, after this year's offense, looks pretty fancy, might get a head coaching gig elsewhere. And in that case, you could promote Keenan McCardell to offensive coordinator, which is always still kind of an awkward job because Kevin O'Connell's the play caller, but it would be Eric Bieniemy like springboard where, he is the offensive coordinator, especially in title, and learns the ropes. So my guess is that if Wes Phillips gets any nibbles in the head coaching search next year, it could be McCardell, who we're talking about 1 year from now as the offensive coordinator. All right, Harrison Phillips, McCardell not leaving, a beloved coach. Every time I hear anything about that guy, it's the players just absolutely loving him. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, what's number 3?
Number 3, I'm moving into the draft here. I'm going Jay Ward, that 4th round pick on Jay Ward. It just feels like when we're talking about the Vikings secondary, I even do this myself. So I blame myself too for this, but we always talk about how the Vikings are so thin in the secondary. They need to find more players. And so they've got this guy in Jay Ward who can literally play every single position. He could go on the outside in the corner. He can step into the slot. He can play some safety for you. He played all 3 positions at LSU pretty extensively over his 3 years. I think it was 3 years at LSU. So this is a guy, regardless of where your needs are, he's going to be able to step in and fill. He's a very physical presence in the run game as well. He's a physical tackler, and being a 4th round pick coming out of a program as esteemed as LSU over the past few years, he should have a chip on his shoulder that he's going to be like, damn it, I'm going to make this roster and I'm going to make an impact in year 1. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
And when you have a thin secondary, it should be easier for Ward to make a somewhat immediate impact. They might slow roll him a bit like they did Asamoah last year, or kind of what they started to do with Scene when he broke his leg. But the fact of the matter is, when you subtract Patrick Peterson, Duke Shelley, Cameron Dantzler, who was just waived again, Shannon Sullivan, and I might forget Chris Boyd. I mean, you got rid of your cornerback room, and besides the guys you drafted, you got rid of them all, which is a huge like tip of the cap to we're doing our things our way now. And in that vein, it's like an open competition outside of Byron Murphy to go win a job. And to your point, that could be Ward. It might take him a year or two, or it could be, August blah 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 that he looks the part and gets the gig. All right, second to last underrated move of the Vikings offseason, kind sir.
I'm gonna go re-signing Garrett Bradbury.
Yeah.
Honestly, this offseason, it felt like going into last offseason, it was a done deal. He's not going to be back in Minnesota. They declined the 5th-year option, the whole thing, and then looked pretty damn good in 2022 before his back injury. Hopefully, he's back healthy, but just the fact that this team's going to be able to say that they're going into 2023 with the exact same offensive line as 2022, the first time in 10 years that they're going to be able to say that. And obviously the first time in Kirk Cousins' tenure that they're going to be able to say that. Just being able to have that continuity, just having that chemistry already built into the offense, I think it's going to be a big deal. And we've already seen like Kirk Cousins himself talking at OTA practices about how it just feels like things are going a lot smoother this year already than they did even last year moving into like training camp. It seems like they just were still trying to work out the kinks of all the offense, just learning all the plays. And he said the last May that they were basically just holding his hand through every single play call. And this year it just feels a lot smoother. So I think that that's a big deal as well. Just keeping those same guys, those same 5 guys, regardless of the names, and the fact that it's a $2.6 million cap hit in 2023, it's not a huge contract at all, especially for a guy. If the Vikings are going to have a more balanced rushing and passing attack where they're running the ball a little bit more, he's pretty damn good at run protection.
He's always been good at that.
Yeah, so even if he has a few hiccups here and there in pass pro, he's a great run blocker, and I think that this is a really good move for the Vikings.
The continuity part is so strange, especially for you, but even for me, who's been a fan since 1996. It's a real throwback to a long time ago for the Vikings to say like, oh, all right, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be more continuity. And this is one of my NBA theories, why LeBron James' version of the Lakers might not ever get back to win a chip is because every year they get a whole new roster.
It's a different team. Yeah.
Yep. And you watch them get outclassed by a cohesive Nuggets team. I think that continuity, not that the Vikings offensive line is congruent with the Nuggets or the Lakers, but it's just that gelling together, especially when you have 2 soon to be all pro guys in Darisaw and O'Neal, and then decent guys in the middle. I think those decent guys in the middle can achieve their purest form if you have the continuity. Whereas usually in a Zimmer offseason, you and I are like, all right, what asshole can they find to play right guard who won't get penalties? That's really was our measuring stick. Which guy on PFF can we maybe get a 59 grade to put at guard? Because that's what we thought was the ceiling. And right now we have Ed Ingram, who conveniently had a similar grade to that, but at least he has the upside and will now have continuity. All right, take us off air. I don't know if this is your most underrated or just the final one on your list.
This is my most underrated. It's probably the favorite move of the entire Vikings offseason, but signing Josh Oliver at that tight end spot. First off, we all know how good he is as a run blocker. Last year at Baltimore, PFF gave him 70 plus in both run blocking and pass protection. So it's pretty damn good in that area. But I also feel like we can't sleep on him as a receiver either, because throughout his college career, he actually turned out to be a pretty damn good receiver at San Jose State. During his senior year, he had 56 receptions, 709 receiving yards, 4 TDs for them. So this guy's definitely proficient as a pass catcher. He put together a pretty damn good RAS grade at the combine as well. It was a 4.63 40 and just showed some really nice explosiveness. So that's the type of thing that I would want in a pass catching tight end. So I think that we're definitely going to see him sort of improve them in terms of their run blocking at that tight end spot, basically being a 6th offensive line for him in those situations. But even in the passing game, I wouldn't be surprised if you see him and Hawkinson line up and they're both running routes and the defenses are like, well, shoot, we gotta pick one of these guys to guard. Which one's it gonna be? And I think that'll leave a few open opportunities for Oliver. So I'd keep an eye on him moving into the 2023 season as a pass catcher.
Yeah, there are 2 reasons that he perhaps erroneously has the run blocking tight end label on him right now. It's because he played for the Ravens, and what do? to
They run the ball.
Yeah, they run the ball next to the Bears, the second most in the league. Who do they employ at TE1? Drum roll, please. Who is it?
Mark
Yep.
Andrews.
And so how the hell is the guy going to get any targets in a run-happy offense led by the second best tight end in football? We don't even know if he's a good pass catcher because they didn't have the infrastructure in Baltimore to promote it. Now, it's not good for him that he has to go now next to TJ Hawkinson because Hawkinson is a target hound. But yeah, if something happens to Hawkinson or they just want to get creative like the Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, the non-violent days, then they can really lean into that and go from there. Now my dogs are erupting, which is conveniently the end of the show, but
yeah,
I'll be
you must
off.
Like the move.
Yeah. For 2 weeks. I'll talk to you in 2 weeks. And by that time, we should have a lot more updates on the Vikings. And that'll just be the start of mandatory minicamp. Any closing arguments, sir?
That's about it. Let's have a good Wednesday.
All right, man. Take it easy.